Hello, and welcome to Encounters with Polish Literature, brought to you by the Polish Cultural Institute, New York. I'm David Goldfarb, and I'll be your host. English speakers who are interested in poetry, if they know even a little about Poland, are likely to know the work of Czesław Miłosz, Zbigniew Herbert, Wisława Szymborska, and maybe Tadeusz Różewicz and Adam Zagajewski, all poets we have discussed on the program. And if you haven't watched those episodes, you can find them on the main index page for Encounters with Polish Literature or in the playlist of past episodes, both linked in the description below. The 20th century was truly an age of giants in Polish poetry, perhaps because war and censorship favored short forms. The culture of poetry in Poland has a long history dating back to the Renaissance, and a culture of reading and writing poetry thrived in Poland under difficult conditions. Today, censorship is over in Poland, and thankfully, war has stayed outside of Poland's borders, so writing has become a safer profession in Poland, as it is in most of Europe and North America. But there are still poets who have come out of this tradition, this age of giants, who have new things to say about contemporary life in new ways. And I'd like for us to meet two of them today, both of whom have publications in English translation and who have visited the United States in the recent past, Krystyna Dąbrowska and Tomasz Różycki. If you like our series, click the bell to receive notifications about new episodes. Press the button to subscribe and follow our playlist down in the description below to catch up on past episodes. Krystyna Dąbrowska was born in 1979 and is a poet, essayist, and translator. She is the author of 5 books of poetry, most recently Miasto z Indu, City of Indium, published in 2022. She has won the Wisława Szymborska Award, the Kościelski Prize for Young Writers, and the Literary Award of the capital city of Warsaw. Her poems have been translated into more than 20 languages. They have appeared in Harper's Magazine, the journal Poetry, Georgia Review, Threepenny Review, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Akzente, and Sinn und Form. Full-length collections of her poems have been published in Italian, German, Swedish, Portuguese, and English. And in English, Tideline from Zephyr Press in 2022, translated by Karen Kovacic, Mira Rosenthal, and Antonia Lloyd-Jones, was a finalist for the Derek Walcott Prize and longlisted for Alta's National Translation Award in Poetry. She won a 2024 Pushcart Prize for the poem Travel Agency, translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. She translates the work of Louise Gluck, among others, into Polish. In 2022, she participated in the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa, and she lives and works in Warsaw. Tomasz Różycki was born in 1970 and has 9 volumes of poetry to his credit. Most recently, Ręka Pszczelarza, The Beekeeper's Hand, in 2022, winner of the Wisława Szymborska Award. He has 2 epic poems, Iasz in 2021 and 12 Stations, which has been translated into English by Bill Johnston. He has 2 novels, most recently The Lightbulb Thieves in 2023, winner of the Grand Continent Award, as well as 2 volumes of sketches, most recently The Test of Fire, The Erroneous Cartography of Europe, published in 2020 and winner of the Ambassador of the New Europe Award. He has received, among other honors, the Kościelski Prize, the Václav Burian Award, and the Samuel Linde Award, and has been a guest of the Berliner Künstlerprogramm Scholarship and the Siegfried Unseld Professorship at Humboldt University in Berlin. Krystyna and Tomasz, it's great to see you again and to have you here on Encounters with Polish Literature.
Thank you very much, David, for this invitation. I'm very happy to be with Krystyna in this mission.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy too, and I'm looking forward.
Great. So let me ask you, I know both of you were recently touring the United States. You both have new publications in English. We have Tomasz Różycki to the letter with all my notes in it, and Krystyna Dąbrowska tagline. Let's get that without any reflections there. Okay, so we can read the title. And you're both here to give readings and talk about your books and read some other new translations that have appeared in journals and so forth. How was it? What did you think of the American public, and what do you think they thought of you?
I was touring, maybe not the very good word, because I was in the US 2 years ago, not so recently. And it was like my book came out at the time, but in 2022. But also I was invited to the international writing program in Iowa. So somehow these two things came together, and it was really wonderful. So I had some readings in the frame of this program, and some of them like independently. And I must say, I think the best readings were in jazz clubs or in some kind of more unofficial spaces and smaller spaces than the universities. And then you could really, I had the feeling I can really feel the contact with the audience. And of course, at first I was a bit worried because in some of these places I had to read my own poems in English. So I practiced a bit, but I was worried how it would come through. But I think it turned out well. I mean, I had a good feedback, and the overall experience was really very good. And also in the universities, I had a reading at the Northwestern University and at Boston University. It was also good. Like many questions followed. So it was somehow for me important experience, because I think it's always for every poet, it's a big question. Do the poems come through the language barrier in translation? And I am very thankful to my translators, 3 of them, Antonia Lloyd-Jones, Mira Rosenthal, and Karen Kovacic, because I know that the main reason these poems somehow came through, I think it is thanks to them. And it was really huge relief and a joy to have some questions about the poems and some feedback. So
did you read together with your translators, or were you pretty much on your own?
It depends. Sometimes I read with Karen Kovacic, and in Boston we read together, and also in New York we had we did a broadcast, a recording for a Poet's House together. Right. And it was very good because it was conversation combined with reading. But sometimes it was just me. So I had to carry the burden of reading in English. Not so easy. But yeah, and it's always, it's always so unexpected what people react to and how they relate to the poems. One reading was very special. I can tell about it. Sure. Because it was in Brooklyn. And actually, it was not my reading. It was organized by my friend who also participated in the international writing program in Iowa. She's a Mexican writer and poet who did Santa Pietra, and she had her reading in Spanish. And she invited me as a guest reader to just read 2 poems. But I didn't know that it would be, the entire reading would be combined, it would be dedicated to some kind of medicinal plants and psychedelic plants and so on.
Interesting. Okay.
It was very interesting, and I read a poem, maybe I will read it here, which is called, in Polish, it's called Rozpaczulga, and it's English, it's sorrow balm, and it is about invented plants. So not a real psychedelic plant, but somehow it resonated with the audience. So I discovered that this poem can have additional meaning.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. Tomasz, how was your visit recently?
Yeah, that was wonderful. I'm very happy because of that, and it was organized only thanks to energy of Mira Rosenthal, my translator.
Mm-hmm.
She was wonderful organizing all those events and putting it together, because we were invited first by NYU creative writing program by one of my friends, poet friends, Matthew Rohrer. And then we started to add some other, maybe once you get to US, you can spend more time and add other readings. And that was a trip both in the East Coast and West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So first I came to New York and then to California. I am very grateful for the support of Polish Cultural Institute, Bartek Remisko, and the Kościuszko Foundation, and my friends, of course, Irena Grudzińska-Gross and Isabella Barry. And without them, that probably wouldn't possible for me to make this trip. And the readings were wonderful because it was very different, very various public and starting.
What differences did you find between the East Coast and the West Coast at your readings?
The differences were at the university, because the first reading was at Cal Poly University and Cal Poly,
where Mira teaches, yeah.
Where Mira teaches, San Luis Obispo, and that was a whole room full of students trying to start with their own writing, with their own poetry, and so they were very interested how to do it, just to have this old man from Europe and ask him something. It was nice. And then another one in San Francisco was very different because it was dedicated. It was in the translation center in San Francisco. So the audience were very attentive and then focused on the translation and how it works between my version and Mira's English version of the same texts, let's say. So it was focused differently. And then in New York, one great reading, very with the small audience in a bookshop in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And then another one, Creative Writing Center, NYU, with a whole bunch of people really interested and really with knowing books and knowing some poems as well, because there was a lot of Polish friends as well. So the difference between California and New York is also in this direction, that in New York I have already a small Polish audience or Eastern European audience attending the readings.
Not so much in California.
Not so much in California, yeah.
Can I just add one thing to the previous?
Yeah.
Because now I remember that when I was in Iowa, one of my poems was used by a dancer. He created choreography based on this poem. It's a short poem. It's called The Spirit of the Forest. Mm-hmm. And this was like, because you asked about like our interaction with the audience. Well, this dancer was not exactly an audience. He was also creator. But for me, this was something really incredible. He used this poem. In the end, you really, like, he asked me to read it first in Polish and then in English, and then he mixed it together. Mm-hmm. And he created choreography. He found the music. It was not his music, but it was really matched very well. and he danced to this poem. And of course, in the end, you had to really listen very carefully to understand the poem, because it was part of the whole performance.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, this was something very opening, like I thought this was a different light. I don't know how to put it. I saw my poem in a totally different way, through the rhythm, for example, because he used the rhythm of the poem. So this was a really wonderful American experience for me.
They don't do that in Poland, you say.
Maybe they do, but I never saw anything like this. The dancer's name is Todd Rhodes, and he was excellent. So,
how do you find it to work with a translator? Both of you have some English, so you have the opportunity to respond to the translation. Do you work differently with different translators? Are you interventionist? And I know, for instance, Bill Johnston told me that one of his authors that he works with, doesn't have very good English, but wants to go over everything in great detail. Maybe you know who it is, but I won't embarrass anyone. But really wants to make sure that that their ideas are coming across. Whereas other people, they're like, Miłosz would say, Chinese translation. Well, what can I do? He would say, this is up to them. I can't. What's your process, each of you? Maybe Krystyna can start. For
the book Tideline, I had 3 translators. I mentioned their names already. Antonia Lloyd-Jones Mira Rosenthal, who translates Tomek's poems, mm-hmm. and Karen Kowaczyk. And it was a bit difficult, because it was not something I intended. It somehow turned out like this, that the mm-hmm. 3 translators were working on my poems, and then there was this idea to combine the translations into one book. Mm-hmm. So I really admire them, that they, 3 of them, really worked together in a very wonderful way, which is always difficult because each translator has different way of translating. Mm-hmm. The poems I'm writing now are translated by Karen Kowaczyk. Mm-hmm. And maybe I will tell about our collaboration. She makes a draft and then she sends me the draft, because she knows I also translate from English. So she sends me the draft, and I have, of course, always questions, suggestions, but I am aware that I am not a native speaker. So sometimes I can have my ideas, but in the end, it's her decision, really, because even when when you hear the language, it is a different thing when you are a native speaker. So we exchange the emails. Usually there are several emails, and There is a long way from the first draft to the final version. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes it's quite exciting process, because I always learn something about my poem during this process. So this is how I work with Karen. With Mira, it was different. Mira usually was very she was a perfectionist, and she would just translate and send me the final version, or with some tiny questions, but a totally different approach. This mm-hmm. is also interesting how translators are just totally different in their work process.
I can see that in Mira. Yeah. So, Tomasz, you've worked with Mira, you've worked with Bill Johnston, someone else maybe or just the 2 of them?
For the English translations, it's mainly Mira with the poems, and Bill Johnston translated 12 Stations, a long epic poem. So this is a different experience. I worked with Bill. It was completely different, because when I went to US previously, I spent with him little time together. We spent this time together organizing some kind of, he was organizing some kind of workshops for the translators at Indiana University.
Right.
And I participated in this workshop, so we could talk about the different versions he proposed at the beginning of this workshop, and it was kind of brainstorm or spontaneously figure out how to tell it in English, how to put it in English. But it was only for the students, because the main job was done by himself, and he enjoyed a lot the how to say the atmosphere of this long poem. So he used a lot of humor, but there was a funny moment. He said that he spent a lot of time searching for different names of flowers I use in the poem, and there was nothing in the dictionaries, and he was very disappointed. And he asked me, "What kind of flowers do you put in your text?" And I said to him, "It's made up. It doesn't exist in reality. So you have to made up as well something funny in this." Yeah. So and with Mira, there's different levels of this cooperation, because she is, like you said, perfectionist, and she is sending me drafts and versions of the poems almost done, but still with questions. And our cooperation is like I'm asking, how does it sound in English? Because to explain what is my intention, I have to say what was my goal. So writing this poem, I intended to create such an atmosphere or such an image, and I just can suggest maybe you can do the same in English, because I'm not able to say how you can do that, but she's also a poet, so she invents, and sometimes it's wonderful done, and it is different from the Polish version, of course, but it's like a original poetry done by Mira. So it's very it depends on the poem, of course, but I'm very happy because of this cooperation. What I intend, my intention almost in every poem is to keep the rhythm, and the rhythm and the assonances, for example, or some kind of rhymes even, are very important for me. So I suggest, or Mira is trying to invent the same meter of the poem in English, just to put it in a way that just to show the rhythm, that the rhythm exists, and the rhythm is you can hear it, you can hear the sound of the poem.
Mira is very good at that. That's really one of her real skills. And I noticed that, Tomasz, you are more kind of motivated by rhythm and by rhyme and by formal structures, maybe more of a neoclassical approach. And Krystyna, you seem to be, writing more in the American style, a little more conversational, where there's rhythm there, but it's not necessarily, four rhymed quatrains, in the way that Tomasz uses into the letter.
Sometimes I use rhymes, but very rarely. And for me, usually when rhymes appear, it's not a good sign in my poems. That it is a sign that I'm going to that I'm like falling into some kind of convention that is not really mine. So I use them sometimes, but very rarely. But the rhythm is very important. It is just different. And also Karen Kowaczyk, she's also very sensitive to the rhythm and to the sound.
Very much so, yes.
And when Tomasz said about the flowers, it was the same with this poem I mentioned already, which is called in Polish Rozpaczulga. And Rozpaczulga is a just invented word. And it's like it's a name of, in this poem, this is a name of totally invented plant. And Karen was the same at first. She was just looking in some folk dictionaries or like looking for this, because she thought it's a folk name of a flower, of a real flower. So then when she discovered it's invented, or I told her, I don't remember, she tried to think about similar word in English, like the word that would not bring the meaning exactly, but that would have this ring of something like a folk name. And she invented the sorrow balm. I am not. So
it means something like relief from despair or something like that.
It's something like this, but just to give it a sound of a folk name. I think it's always with the translation that it cannot be totally faithful, and you cannot just bring the meaning into English, but you have to bring the sound and the atmosphere and even the images, sometimes they cannot be translated in such a direct way. And also in my more recent poems, it was a lot of problems with the idioms, because I played with the Polish idioms. Like we have this idiom saying, in English it would be directly that you have to drink the beer that you yourself brew.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work in English this way.
No.
And I used it in a poem and I played with it. Like this was the starting point for some other image. And then Karen invented something different. And it's always this, this negotiation between what is possible and what you can. Sometimes you lose something, but then you can make some other moment in a poem, resembling what I had in Polish. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you could start. I mean, the immediate translation or the corresponding expression in English would be something like, you make the bed that you lie in. That's kind of
exactly.
But if then you want to sort of develop something else, it's not going to be the same poem.
But in the poem, it was getting drunk on this beer. But another short example, it was a poem translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones, a very short poem, and it started with Polish expression kupić kota w worku, which means to in English, I think it's something with the pig. To buy a pig with, I don't remember.
Pig in a boat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in Polish, it's a cat, and I needed a cat because then the cat turns into a jaguar. So finally, Antonia decided to use the expression to let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah,
which means something different, but it could be then the cat could be changed into jaguars.
And a pig won't change into a jaguar. Would you like to read Rozpaczulga?
Rozpaczulga. Znacie tę roślinę, rozpaczulgę? Kiedy pożar zdusi już do szczętu słowo ty, tobie, z tobą, przez ciebie, dym pobudzi kiełkowanie jej nasion. Kwiat ma ciężki jak czarna piwonia, lecz opadłe płatki są lekkie. Korzeniami sięga do początków zakończonej historii. Jej kolce kaleczą, sok z liści, okłady z nich i napar leczą. Od owoców można dostać torsji lub się uzależnić. Zapomniane w kieszeni zamienią się w grzechotki i będą wygrywać przy każdym kroku desperacki rytm. Rozpaczulga, ulga, rozpacz, rozpaczulga. Jej zapach drażni ja, ledwo zipiące. Czekajcie, zaraz kichnie i trochę się otrząśnie.
Sorrow balm. Do you know the plant sorrow balm? When fire stifles every trace of the word you, for you, with you, because of you, smoke spurs the germination of its seeds. Its blossoms hang heavy as a black peony's. Yet its drooping petals are light. Its roots penetrate the beginnings of a story that's come to an end. Its thorns sear, but a tea or compress from its leaves can heal. Its fruit can be habit-forming, cause nausea. Forgotten in a pocket, it becomes a rattle beating a frantic rhythm with every step. Sorrow balm, balm. For the eye, barely breathing, its scent galls. Wait, here comes a sneeze to clear the head at last. What strikes me about that poem, that's like, aside from the invented name of the flower, is that, when in the third line where, in Polish you have słowo ty, tobie, z tobą, przez ciebie, that's like almost like it's like a grammar lesson, I mean, it's you conjugate the, you decline the noun, for each case, and we don't do that in English. We don't have that as it's translated, but but the gesture is, there's no way to get that gesture in English, I think. So that one has been published, has it, or no?
It has been published in this book, in Polish.
Yes, in
book.
Polish, but not in English?
In English, it has been published in the magazine. I think it was Nimrod, the name of the magazine. I don't remember exactly. But like we are preparing a book, and this poem is in the manuscript of this new book, which is still unpublished, like the English book. So
will it be another collection that's drawn from several different collections like Tideline, or will it be a complete translation of
this collection? Miasto Sindu,
City of Indium.
It's called City of Indium, which is the title of another poem, but also the more recent poems, so the poems that are not published in a book in Poland.
Tomasz, would you like to read one of yours?
Of course, with pleasure. Maybe the first one, if you agree.
Yes, absolutely.
From this collection, To the Letter. Mm-hmm. It's in Polish. The collection is called litery, so letters, and that was the kind of problem with the translation, because the letters in English, it's not necessarily the characters. I mean, the letter A, B, C, but also the written letter to somebody else, and it was
right.
So Mira decided to change the title to the letter, and the poem is called in Polish Łąka. It's the first one. Jak to się stało, że zwariowaliśmy razem i tak leżymy teraz w wygniecionej trawie, która brzęczy i śpiewa? Wokół świat obraca swoje ogromne ciało, wrzask i śmiech epoki. I odrzutowiec tnie pustkę w czworoboki. Nasze skrzydlate dzieci krążą ponad nami, a ty ręką przesuwasz obłok. Do niedzieli ładnie, potem nadejdzie front. Jak to się stało, że razem zwariowaliśmy? Miłość zatruła nas zielonym jadem i leżymy naćpani sobą w gęstej trawie. Gdzie się podział czas, ten kat i jego narzędzia, łańcuchy cyfr, numery? Para wariatów, jedna głoska, dwie litery. Wybrałem właśnie ciebie. Życzliwi donieśli, że można z tobą oszaleć. Pachniały akacje i tylko tyle mam na usprawiedliwienie.
Meadow, how did this happen? Us going crazy together. And now we're lying in this trampled grass that buzzes and hums. Around us, the massive body of the world turns. This era's screams and laughter. A jet divides the emptiness in squares. Our winged children circle high above, and with your hand, you shift the clouds. It's clear till Sunday, then a front is coming. How did love poison us with verdant venom? How did we end up going crazy together, lying in dense grass, high on each other? And what's become of time, that hangman with his tools, chains, digits, numbers? A pair of stupid fools, one sound, two letters. It was you I chose, and oh, so selflessly they warned that you will make me lose it. The perfume of acacias in bloom is my only excuse. In the collection, you spend a lot of time meditating on letters, like the letters of the Polish alphabet that we don't have in the English language, and certainly not in American English. And the word that's the title of the poem starts with two of those letters. We start with wong, which we don't have in English, which are so characteristically Polish that people who are kind of linguistic nationalists, they'll say, jestem that I am, the nasal vowels, that in that way that they do only in Polish, because Polish is the last Slavic language to have nasal vowels, which exist in Old Church Slavonic, and there's a kind of a form of them, I guess, in Macedonian, but they're combined with consonants, I believe. I don't know Macedonian, so don't hold me to that. But there's that's what how were you motivated to write a whole volume of poems that are so engaged with language at the level of the letter?
Yeah, there were also very different and various motivations, of course, and I agree with you that the Polish language is special with all those very strange signs on, and I found in one of those poems I found that this is kind of a mockery. I don't know in English, of mockery of the Latin, because in Latin you have the letters without those on, which is kind of defigurating the Latin letters. The sounds is in Polish is different, and the Polish letter with this on sounds and looks like a mockery from the Latin one. So of the Latin one. So I found that the whole Polish literature is kind of mockery of the ancient classical literature, and there is a little swifting of the sense of the meaning in Polish with this little signs, and you changes not only the shape of the letter but also the meaning. So of the classical themes or the classical topics and classical motifs. So that was the one. The other one was that I found it's maybe too dramatic, I would say, but I find the writing is kind of more letters I write down and I publish. More I am there between the letters and not in a real life. So I'm losing my real life, my real figure, and moving slowly, letter after letter, to the books, and until I die, and then it's over. I am only in the book, not not in a real life.
You're
no
turning
more.
yourself into the letters. I know there's the one
Yeah.
poem where you describe, the letters being like, the speaker of the poem is describing, the letters being like maggots, inside of their flesh, right? That's kind of coming out for better or for worse. I mean, I always enjoy the humor in your poems, that self-irony, or the humor that sort of comes between, often what might be religious or classical imagery, and scenes of everyday life and ordinary language. That's it never gets too serious.
It's a trap. Write serious poems in a serious way about the serious thing. So it's a trap. So you have to every time you have to find a way how to tell it, but not in a very direct style, and because it became something obvious and something banal, like trivial. I think. So there is a poem about the reader, for example, in this collection, which
Yes.
is a kind of trick with the normal meeting, reading with the author.
Mm-hmm.
And in that poem, there is a meeting, reading by the reader, and the authors are in the between the audience, between the public.
Would you like to? It's a long poem, so maybe we won't read it in both languages. Would you like to read maybe a stanza of that, and I'll read it in English?
Okay, I will just
And then we'll
start.
come back to Krystyna afterward.
I will just start the poem and then let you read the rest, the continuation. It's called Kryzys czytelnictwa polskiego. Tymczasem w auli spotkanie z czytelnikiem, na sali sami autorzy książek. Dla niektórych zabrakło miejsc siedzących. Wreszcie wchodzi, nieco spóźniony, chwiejnym krokiem, łyknął sobie jednego dla kurażu w garderobie, brawa i flesze, transmisja na żywo.
Well, the poem in Polish is called the crisis of the Polish reader, but in English it's called the first crisis of the reader. So it's not, Mira takes it outside the realm of the Polish reader, but of course, like we're both dealing with crises of reading, right? In both countries, that book reading is in decline around the world because of other things. Media, the internet, social media, and so forth. I mean, we're reading more on social media, I suppose, because we're reading constantly, but yet we're not reading things that people have, maybe stopped to write thoughtfully and revised, and and so forth. I've started revising my own social media posts much more than I used to. I realized that they could be better. I could write them more thoughtfully. But so the first crisis of the reader. Meanwhile, there aren't enough seats for so many authors who hope to get noticed by the one and only reader tonight. He takes the stage at last, a bit late, rather tipsy, from a swig of courage backstage. Applause and flashes, a live broadcast. When asked, he proclaims the best of the best, sums up the plot. Some authors sigh knowingly, some authors sigh with discontent, and hands shoot up. But how exactly do you read? Where? At what time? On the couch? In bed? At the hotel bar? Hardback or paperback? Kindle or Nook? What makes a book the book? I prefer reading to feel like a feast. Let it be a celebration. The reader decrees. It's a holiday. I get to set my choice of dress code, my own ineptitude. Reading, he smirks, should be done rarely and reluctantly. But how do you choose? The authors want to know. When two books lie before you, do you take the one less played by? Does that make all the difference? The tour goes on for weeks. The reader tries discreetly to wipe away the sweat from his lip when signing books the authors wrote themselves. The queue goes round the bend, writers pushing their tomes at him, but he's just one measly person among the throng of wordsmiths waiting to be read. Aren't you scared? Someone asks. It's a risky pastime, he admits, let alone a calling. You should try it sometime. This occupation of mine, with all its hallmarks of saintliness. Who knows where it comes from? I simply can't remember not reading and dreaming in letters. Then I met a poet. Maybe my sacrifice isn't so huge. Besides, he quips, just look at all the money and groupies to keep me going. But when it gets really tough, when an author sends threatening letters or spray paints quotes from their book on my door, I have dark thoughts and am plagued with addictions. I'm a wreck of a man, dreaming in fiction, living in a nightmare. What a joke, he says, crushing the empty plastic water bottle. Can we finish this up? It's so stuffy in here. Soon he'll be telling us with a sigh. Soon he'll be telling this with a sigh, all over again for the glossies. A very unlikely situation of the readers reading and signing books for the authors. Do you find the reading circuit frustrating?
I wrote it after the report of the Polish National Library about the reading status in Poland.
Yeah.
Every year they publish something like that, and it occurs that the Poles read only 37% of Poles read one book in a year.
No, better than the United States, I'm sure.
What was the book they read? They said everyone said almost the same title from the school, W pustyni I w puszczy, which is absurd. You cannot read every year the same book. So that was something tricky with this report, and so then I imagined that there will be the situation will be reversed. Like a reader reading for the authors. And
I remember the poll about readership in Poland. It was done several years ago when Maria Janion lived, a famous Polish critic, and so it was I think the outcome was similar, like one book per year or something like this, but everybody said that it is because the poll was done also in Maria Janion's apartment, where she has like thousands and millions of books. You didn't even move in between the books. So each Polish person got this one book that was really read by Maria Janion. So this was the reason why they read it all.
Yeah, it's something that's true everywhere, and one of the reasons that we have our program, right, where we emphasize reading.
So
reading physical
Maria
books,
is this reader from your poem, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Only reader.
Yeah, that was this old joke about what is the difference between a concert of the rock group and a concert of the jazz group, musical group. So on the concert of the rock group, everyone from the public knows the name of the player, and in a concert of the jazz band, every player knows the names of everyone in the public. So.
Yes, it's not your responsibility, I guess, to as a writer to increase readership. You do what you do, and then somehow it gets out there. I suppose I'm not sure how, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Krystyna, would you like to, could I ask you to read one? Would you like to read from, since Tideline is recent, is a book that our audience can actually pick up and read.
Of course.
Would you mind reading the title poem?
Title poem.
Yesterday I saw a dog at the Tideline.
Yeah, this is actually, it is a really very old poem from my first book published in Poland, and I think I don't even remember how old I was when I've written it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like the first poem when I really felt, okay, now I know how to, like, I somehow I found the voice to write my first book, so now I'm reading it with a bit mixed feelings because it is so old. Wczoraj widziałam psa na brzegu morza. Wczoraj widziałam psa na brzegu morza, młodego czarnego psa, jak z rozpędu wpada do wody i gryzie ją i orze. a zaraz płoszy się, cofa, pulsuje z krajem plaży, staje, skrada się, trąca nosem bokwali, ostrożnie obwąchuje toń i szturcha łapą, bodzie, drażni morze, jakby zaczepiał ogromne stare zwierzę. Weź go lepiej na smycz. Nie trzeba, morze jest smyczą. Wczoraj widziałam psa na brzegu morza. Próbował przegryźć srebrną linę wody, zawracał w stronę wytm, wysypisk, galopował na parking. Już doganiał papierowy kubek na pomoście, już wyławiał z piasku jakiś ciemny przedmiot i wtedy morze ściągało go szarpnięciem i pies był błyskawicznie znów przy falach, szarpiąc obrożę metalowych kropel.
Yesterday, I saw a dog at the tide line. Yesterday, I saw a dog at the tide line, a young black dog. How he kept falling headlong into the water, chomping and plowing through, then instantly scared, retreated, trotted along the edge of the beach, stopped, crept, nosed the fringe of a wave, gingerly sniffing the depths, and prodding with his paw, butting heads, teasing the sea as if provoking a huge old animal. Better put him on a leash. No need, his leash is the sea. Yesterday, I saw a dog at the tide line. He was trying to bite through the water's silver rope, then turned toward the dune dump, raced to the parking lot, already catching up to the paper cup on the pier, already fishing from the sand some dark object, and then the sea yanked him back, and in a flash, the dog was at the waves again, straining against his collar of metal drops. A translation by Mira Rosenthal in this case. Is the photograph shows is the poem based on the photograph?
No, absolutely no, really. The poem is just from another epoch, but the photographs actually it is taken by me in San Francisco. When was it? It was 8 years ago, I think. We had a reading with Julia Fiedorczuk, Polish, very good Polish poet,
Yes.
and Izabela Morska in San Francisco, in Berkeley, actually, at the University of Berkeley. And then I spent some days in San Francisco, and I walked this ocean trail because I love walking. I am peripatetic.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the dog there from my poem. It has jumped from my poem and run through the years and met me there.
I know you studied photography. Yes, you have a.
I've studied art, graphic designs, but it was like it was in Warsaw at the Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts, and we studied everything: painting, drawing, photography, everything. So and now I'm not I don't do anything in visual arts except for the photography. I love it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but I had. Can I ask you to read another poem? This is a poem about translation in some way, and also about life turning into a poem. What Tomek said that you said that you are disappearing into the letters, and finally you will be just in your books. So I think that there is something like this in this poem too. And about translation. Telefon. Ilekroć jestem w jej kraju, moja tłumaczka pożycza mi telefon swojego zmarłego męża. Czarna, gładka tabliczka, jak miniaturowy nagrobek. Nie ma dat narodzin i śmierci, ale podłączony pępowiną kabla do źródła zasilania ożywa i wyświetla wiadomości dla zmarłego. Jim, twój znajomy, skomentował. Jim, zaktualizuj. Telefon nie tylko jest ze zmarłym po imieniu. Kiedy tłumaczka zadzwoniła spytać o jakieś słowo w wierszu, a ja nie odebrałam, odezwał się do niej jego głosem. Za nie mówiłam, powiedziała potem. Rok po, a jakby wciąż tu był. Jakby był i mógł kliknąć wyskakującą na ekranie zajawkę CNN. Ceny gazu, imigracja, śnieżyca, podatki. Zamiast niego ja klikam. Dodaję swoje konta i kontakty do jego kontaktów i kont. Robię zdjęcia, znajduję je w jego albumie. Najpierw trzymają się z brzegu, jak nieśmiali goście. Z czasem przybywa ich i zaczynają się rozpychać i dziwić, kto to, gdy wychynie zza nich jak widmo selfie gospodarza. Jim był poetą. Teraz jego telefon, prowadząc mnie przez nowe rejony, gdzie jest jedyną moją mapą, zwolna staje się wierszem. Coraz więcej w nim ze mnie, więc odwlekam puentę. Zabieram go w transatlantycki lot do kraju, w którym nigdy nie był. Jeszcze parę linijek, jeszcze jedna, zanim przekażę go tłumaczce.
Cell phone. Each time I'm in her country, my translator lends me the phone of her dead husband. The smooth black slab like a miniature gravestone. It doesn't have dates of his birth or death, but connected by umbilical cord to a power source, it comes to life with messages for the dead. Jim, your friend commented. Jim, get updates. Not only the phone is on a first-name basis with him. When my translator calls to ask me about some word in a poem and I don't pick up, the phone responds with his voice. I felt tongue-tied, she tells me later. A year on, it's like he's still here. As if he were here and could click on push alerts from CNN. The price of gas, immigration, the blizzard, taxes. Instead, I'm the one who clicks. I add my accounts and contacts to his contacts and accounts. The pictures I take go into his album. At first, they huddle at the edge like shy guests, but over time they push their way in and are surprised when a selfie of their host appears like a ghost behind them. Jim was a poet. Now his cell phone, leading me through new terrain where it's my only map, slowly becomes a poem. There's so much more of me in it, so I keep delaying the end. I take it on a transatlantic flight to a country he never visited. Just a couple of lines yet. Now one more, before I hand it over to my translator. There is something in common there with this image of becoming the text, becoming like the letters. And of course, there's also something very, very real and very realistic, right? I mean, that you are borrowing a phone from your translator, if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Yeah, well, I am, and this is based on a true story, of course,
there's some truth there, but there's also something metaphor. It becomes metaphor because that's what poets do.
I like when you have. I think what is inspiring for me, it's the situations that are on the one hand they are very realistic. And on the other hand, they are very metaphorical, and at the same time, you have this both sides at the same time, not just metaphor and not just realism, but the two combined. So yeah.
So we could go on forever. We had many poems from both of you, but we're pretty much at the end of our hour. So let me ask you before we go, like what plans you have in mind for the next year or so? Are either of you you both been here kind of recently? Are you traveling, or do you have like publications in English due out soon, or how does the next year look for our members of our audience who might want to interact with you either on the page or in person?
So as to me, I am preparing with my translator another book in English, and the working title or tentative title is Sorrowbound, from this poem I've just read, but it's not decided yet. I wanted the book to be titled City of Indium, the title of another poem. Karen Kovacic has a different idea, so we will see how it goes. So this is.
I had to look up what Indium was when I read the poem.
Indium, the poem was, I think it was written during the pandemic or at the end of pandemic, and I just read about there is a wonderful site online which is called the Material Library, and it's actual material library in London in the Institute of Design. And this is a library which gathers all the things and substances we use in everyday or some extraordinary materials. It can be like toothbrush, it can be everything. And among these materials, I found a metal called indium, which I've heard of indium, but never in this context. And I read that if you try to shape indium, if you have like a rod of indium or something, if you try to shape it, it screams a bit like tin, you know. And for me, it was so moving that the metal, which usually we associate with something cold, and you know, usually it's a metaphor for not having feelings, or you know, and that the metal is so sensitive and that it protests, you know, that it's like a metaphor for rebellion. And this was the starting point for the poem. Yeah.
And it's something that we're all probably, everybody who's watching this program is handling it right now, because it's used to make flat screens.
Yeah.
I discovered, yes. So that's, I wonder, what do they use it for?
It turns out, yeah.
We're all handling it. And Tomasz, what are your plans for the coming year? Do you have another publication coming out, or are you planning to do any more traveling?
Yes, I have a publication this fall. There will be a book of poems in Polish, of course, the next one, and but and a lot of traveling as well, because there are in preparation. I have 2 books in German, 2 another books in Italian, and so on. So in French, in Spanish, I published last year a novel, and now probably the publisher is searching for an English publisher, English speaking word, and that would be translated probably into English. It's in Polish. It's called Złodzieje żarówek. So, but I'm not aware.
How do they translate that into English? Złodzieje are like thieves or criminals, and żarówek is the light bulb. The light bulb thieves.
Light bulb thieves. Yeah, I think so. I know that Antonia made already a excerpt for the book fair.
Okay,
for the book fair.
All right. Well, I good luck with that. We do have many editors who watch our program and sometimes become intrigued about things that they find out. So if anyone is interested in the light bulb thieves, then they can get in touch with Antonia Lloyd-Jones and read her sample. So thank you both so much for joining me on the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. This is a pleasure, a great honor to be there.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, the same for me.
Slow down. Please subscribe and click the bell to stay on top of the program. Watch the credits for some recommendations about how you can support aid for Ukraine and for Ukrainians fleeing the war in their country. I'd like to thank all the people who helped make this series possible. The Polish Cultural Institute New York sponsors our program. Bartek Remisko, head of Humanities and Literature at the Polish Cultural Institute New York, is our executive producer. Natalia Iudin is my fellow producer and editor. Our opening and closing music is by Radek Przedpełski. Thank you all for listening and reading along with us. Our schedule is falling into place for the next 6 months, but we've got upcoming episodes on Auschwitz memoirist Tadeusz Borowski, the Enlightenment novelist Ignacy Krasicki, Roma poet Papusha, and more. So we'll be back with another encounter in a month. See you then.
Jest to szary dzień, jak zawsze w tej okolicy. Cała sceneria wydaje się chwilami fotografią z ilustrowanej gazety. Tak szare, tak płaskie są domy, ludzie i pojazdy.